Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Suze Allen, and I'm the founder and lead editor, writer, teacher at manuscriptmentor.com. And this is our second offering of Memoir Church, Not Your Grandma's Gospel. And we have with us today the person that started it off, my best friend and a wonderful writer who has one memoir and another in the works, Lisa Stathopoulos. She inaugurated Memoir Church, and this is our second time, and we are just thrilled to have with us Nol Putnam. And Nol, hello, here he is. Yay!
Should I bow?
A little mini bow.
Yeah,
Welcome, everybody. So we're going to start off with some, just talking to Nol a little bit about his work and what brings him to church today. But a couple of things I would just like to say. If this program is totally free, but if you felt generous, there is a donate button on my website, manuscriptmentor.com, that helps us keep the computers working and the Zoom happening and all that. This is recorded because we try to cut it down, and a big thanks to Michael Crockett, who helped me with the recording. Helped me, I say. He did it all as putting it together. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Nol Putnam, live from Rappahannock County, Virginia, with his dog Jack, somewhere in there, I bet, is listening. So Nol, welcome.
thank you.
Nol is, we've known each other. I was just checking my records for a little over a year. And it's been my great honor to know Nol and to get to work with him in our weekly memoir class, The Art of Legacy Writing. And Nol, I also had the good pleasure of reading his memoir, Learning to Dance, that has not been published yet. But Nol, how long would you say you've been writing?
Lordy. Can I say from college?
You can say whatever you want. We're not fact checking here. Whatever you say, just we believe you. It's church after all.
I probably got interested in writing when I came back from the service and went back to college to finish that. And then certainly while I was a teacher for 14 years, I kept a pretty extensive journal. And then I sort of was lackadaisical for a bunch of years while I taught myself to be a blacksmith. And then probably, 15 years ago, I took it up, had a wonderful class with Mary Sherman Willis here in the county until COVID ended that. And I just wrote for myself. And then Miranda introduced us, and here I am in your class.
Yes.
Happily.
Thank you, Miranda. There are some silver linings to COVID, like I get to have Nol in my class, so that's exciting. Nol, so you do have two published books with Blue Moon Press, and those are books about blacksmithing. Can you talk a little bit about your blacksmithing journey, because it's very, very interesting, and you're very renowned for your amazing work.
Well, what can I say about blacksmithing? I've been working at it for 50 years. I'm self-taught. I had literally a book in one hand and a hammer in the other. And I'd milk the cow in the morning, and I'd say, what am I going to look? And I'd work today, and I'd go in and have a second cup of coffee, and I'd go through the book and said, this is what I'll try to do today. And so gradually, I taught myself. I made a lot of hooks to get started. That was in Western Massachusetts in 1976, the anniversary of the country. I moved to Virginia. I moved on July 3rd. On July 4th, I had my first fair in the county seat, Washington, Virginia. And they say I haven't looked backward since. So.
Yes, well, we can actually, your work is at the National Cathedral, and are you finishing up? Are you still working on the last piece for them, the last commission?
I've finished the last piece, and it will be delivered probably the end of this month. So, yeah.
Exciting. If you'd like to take a look at Nol's work, I put in the chat a link for Blue Moon Press, their website, and you can buy he has 2 books, and you can go there to purchase them if you like them, or to just look at his work and see that he is no slouch. 50 years. Beautiful.
The other thing, if you want to see more pictures, you can just Google my name, and my name will come up, and a lot of stuff there, you know.
All good stuff, right? We're not going to see any.
Of course, yeah, no, nothing risque. Yeah, I hope.
We'll let you know.
Yeah, well, I did have a website at one time, and I let it lapse, and it next appeared as taken over by a Japanese porn shop. So, who knows?
Well, so look for that. If you get bored with Nol's blacksmithing work, you can go to see Japanese.
Only a little embarrassing.
Oh, well, so your memoir really starts from when you were a little boy, right? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, the shape of your work, the memoir?
Well, I was born in 1934, which was the second year of Franklin Roosevelt's first term. So everything's changed a lot since then. There were 130 million people in the country then. There are now some 330 million. We've changed completely. And what I find not most interesting, but a little strange sometimes, is that I will throw out an idea or a phrase or an incident, which I think is common knowledge, and people turn and look at me and say, "What?" Yeah, it's just not there. So I guess that's the advantage of living a long time. So I started with my memoir as a little boy in Boston, where I was born, and one of 4 kids, and track it variously as I remember, at least as I remember, through the years down to being a blacksmith, and now entering into my dotage, and what am I going to do now? And we'll find out. Maybe you will too.
Yeah, well, and that's the beauty of memoir work, is it's you curate your life and your memories. You look at, and it's your perspective of them and how you want to put them together. And yours is real chronological, and that's really wonderful to track you through the years, what was going on in the country, what was going on in your particular life as well. And you're an activist, so that those sometimes go hand in hand, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Good. Well, I think we're ready for you to read us something, Mr. Putnam.
Okay.
We look forward to it. You're going to be reading 3 pieces, and I'll let you introduce each piece as you go. And then if you want to stick around afterwards, I'm going to give you all a chance to ask Nol some questions, or have any comments that you would like to have for him. Okay? All right, Nol, take it away.
Okay. So this is a chapter from what I'm generously calling my memoir, called Richelieu. The date line is February 12th, 1943, Estonia, Washington Depot, Connecticut. In late 1942, free French sailors in Marseille took command of the battleship Richelieu. France was divided between the German-occupied north, the collaborating Vichy government under Marshal Pétain in the south, and the Free French being led by General de Gaulle from Great Britain. A number of sailors took over the Richelieu, the foremost French battleship, and sailed it across the Mediterranean to the port of Algiers, where the crew took over a fueling dock to bunker a full load of oil. And finally, defying the order of the Vichy government to scuttle the ship, they sailed across the Atlantic. As the Free French battleship and flagship, sinking her would have been a bitter blow to de Gaulle and a coup for Germany. She arrived in New York Harbor, where a complement of tugs and fireboats escorted her up the East River to the Brooklyn Navy Yard for overhaul and refitting. This was a tremendous propaganda scoop. There were parades of contingents of all the allies that could be gathered, parties, great speeches, reviewing stands made large enough for all to take credit. And then arose the question of how to feed and house 1,000 French sailors while the ship was in dry dock. The French Cross was enlisted to find homes, to commandeer unused hotels, any place that could take, bed, or feed a number of these sailors. From my mother, I am a de Montalon. Our French connection arrived in this country in the early 19th century, but France has remained a touchstone throughout the years. The link to France was also vital for my stepfather. In 1916, he enlisted in the French Ambulance Corps and spent 2 years taking wounded to the rear and bringing baguettes to the front lines. So it was Armistice Day from World War I that my family celebrated as I was growing up. No matter where we were at 11 o'clock on the 11th of November, we paused. At first, I was much too young to know what for. Yet there I stood beside my stepfather, he at attention, eyes moist or with tears on his cheeks, sometimes humming the Marseillaise, his hand at his brow, palm outward in the manner of the hoary French infantryman, the poilu. When the call went out from the Red Cross in 1943 for help in feeding and entertaining these French sailors, my stepfather was all but first in line. I imagine the 8 sailors arrived by train at New Milford. I imagine too that George Kaler, my school bus driver, steam shovel operator, and staunch Yankee met them with a local Red Cross member as they detrained, probably bewildered. Did anyone among the greeters speak French? And then the trip over the roller coaster roads to our farm. The bus lurched up the hill over the rutted dirt road to our house, stopped, and the door opened. The first of the sailors stepped down. My father saluted in his poilu best. He repeated each gesture, each word for each sailor, and then ushered them, George Kaler, and the very surprised Red Cross escort into our house, into our kitchen, which looked much like any farm kitchen found in the French countryside. The madame of the house was introduced, my mother, again, a word of welcome, kisses on each cheek, blushes, murmured mercies. Tony, my younger sister, the mademoiselle, and I, the young monsieur, were handed around the group. My parents had given some thought on how they would entertain this group. There would be far too many people to just sit around the kitchen table. And after so many days at sea and so many parades to attend, Father and Mummy devised a way where they could unwind amongst themselves, away from prying eyes and for too many badly phrased questions. In those days in New England, it was a rich or city house that did not heat, at least partially, with wood. Deep in our woods, my father had constructed a 3-sided cabin where we could cook our lunch on an open fire, get warm, perhaps dry out from the rigors of felling trees and gathering wood against next year's winter. It was there we led this motley crew into a small cathedral of hemlock and hickory, the cabin perched on an outcropping of ledge. 8 French sailors, 2 guides, if you count me, an old Yankee understanding nothing of the language, 2 rambunctious dogs, most of us carrying part of the provisions. The provisions would have been difficult for a regular household in 1943, but ours was a small farm. We always slaughtered 2 pigs a year. Father and Mummy first curing the hams and bacons, roasts and chops in barrels of brown sugar and salt, and then smoking them all with apple, hickory, or maple wood. We left the kitchen, down the steps, across the dam of the duck pond, through an old orchard, and around the swimming hole. The trail curved around a low hill across the bottom of the hayfield, which once grew tobacco. Back into the woods, older growth here, the ground softer with the tilth of years. It always felt like going back in time to me. Then the path wound around the base of a small hill of granite boulders, not soft and rounded, but jumbled up as though cleaved by some giant. Then through a small glade, complete with spring. And there, on a small rise, capped with a spreading ash, was the cabin. The hampers were opened, slabs of bacon brought out. A glass gallon jug was put to one side containing several dozen eggs and other omelet ingredients, all mixed together, ready for the huge camp frying pan. Several men were directed to start the fire. Loaves of French bread baked by my mother were set to one side, and then the wine, vin ordinaire, or gallows best. Jelly glasses, tin cups with the cobwebs washed out with water from the spring, the wine poured, the party truly began. The pan hot, slabs of bacon filled the bottom, began to sizzle, sending a delicious aroma into the air. Some of the sailors could not wait. They took a piece of bread and laid slices of raw bacon lengthwise, eating it as one might pate. Apparently, that made a huge impression on me as I remember it across all the years. The bacon done and removed, the omelet mixture now bubbling deliciously in the bacon grease. Plates made from logs split as if for shingles held the food. Places were found to sit on logs, to lean against trees, to jostle together until there was space for not one more person. Father kept me busy getting implements, gathering more wood, serving more wine, passing bread, bacon. I received not a few affectionate hugs, touches, mercis. No doubt I was a reminder of families left at home. I felt very important. I could barely understand a word of what was said. My parents spoke French only when they wished to speak privately to each other in front of us children. Yet I could sense the nostalgia, the longing for home, stories several shared, their mates holding their words close, away from the strictures of duty, of danger, of all that makes us hold ourselves rigid and contained. This day was safe. Defenses came down with the familiar food, with comrades who knew and understood without the need of words. The humanness of goodwill appeared in and around that cabin, perched on a small rock outcropping in the low hills of Western Connecticut. The day waned. At dusk, we repacked the hamper and baskets. The fire was put out with water from the spring. Dogs leading the way, we trudged back to the house, around the pond, under the kitchen apple tree, up the stone steps, across the terrace, into the warmth of the kitchen. Everyone signed the guest book, complete with their addresses. The goodbyes were long and heartfelt. Mr. Kaler ushered us all onto the bus, and they were off to the train and back to their regular and parallel world. Some weeks later, an envelope arrived, delivered by Mr. Kaler, with a return address of the Richelieu, a letter of thanks from these men, their names all signed, and a final postscript from the captain, thanking my parents for their gifts to ease these men. My parents were newcomers to this small and insular New England town, accepted politely as guests usually are. But because of the openness of my parents to these strangers, I always felt that Mr. Kaler was warmer to me and Tony from that day forth. This morning, 76 years later, I had arranged for workers to come patch my library ceiling after a water leak. The room is beautiful. It has served over the years as a kind of chapel. For me, it is a place where the past, where scholarship, where learning is sought after. It has served me as a refuge in our hedonistic age. The floor of cherry, the walls lined with bookshelves filled with my choices for reference, for reading, the writers who have staked claim to my heart, such as Kipling, Ransom, Buchan, and Deloria. At the center, a collection of books on ironwork and art that span 150 years of printing and several centuries of creation. A fireplace stands at the end of the room, surrounded by handmade tiles from a Pennsylvania craftsman on a raised hearth. On one side is a book press, too heavy to lift, and on the other, an easy chair, a standing lamp I made years ago, a footstool, a small table to hold my tea. The room, indeed the house, may seem too grand for one, and perhaps it is an anachronism, certainly unexpected on this rural county with more cows than people. I think for many people, it is a little off-putting, not knowing how to fit this with me or the house or my work or the year. The room is a throwback to an earlier time, the house too, with its stucco facade, conjuring Tidewater, Virginia, a slower pace of coastal living, or perhaps the North Shore of Massachusetts, old money, or old money played out in an older time. Yet here I am, and here is this room. Jack, my dog, heard the knock before me. I glimpsed a van in the driveway, silhouetted behind two figures. I opened the library door, put up my hand to welcome inside Reina, no last name, and Nelson Martinez. I am Nol, standing on the rug, eyes taking in the floor, the books. Should I take off my shoes? Asked Nelson. He looked medium height, good full beard, shaved head, Hispanic, Central America. Reina, the shy one, took everything in through cast down eyes, perhaps Puerto Rican. They both appeared to be in their 30s with Spanish as their, alas, not mine, common language. Jack broke the ice by sniffing shoes and legs, and they let him once they were assured he wished only to sniff and not bite. You've driven a long way this morning. Some coffee? In my own work, I have often driven many miles without a coffee before the work begins. A nod from Reina. Sure, said Nelson. We'll get our stuff. Do you have a step ladder that's taller than ours? I forgot the 9-foot ceilings and crown molding and sent him to the forge. When he came back with the ladder, his first words, wow, you have a lot of big tools. What do you do? I showed him some pictures from the gates in my book. He turned the pages slowly, nodding his head. Reina looked slant around his shoulder. Meanwhile, I bring the coffee from the kitchen, dripped into a hand-thrown pot, 2 matching cups, spoons, cream in a little glass pitcher I just found at a house sale, and sugar in an old plastic fancy ice cream container, all served on a tall tray. At the last minute, I add 2 clementine oranges and took it downstairs, placing it on an old 18th century English oak half-round table. The air in the room had changed. We had somehow reached across the chasm and shared our common humanity, recognizing each other. This is different from the day the young sailors left the Richelieu to share a picnic with my family in Connecticut woods during wartime. I have no slab bacon or baguettes to serve Nelson and Reina, and I have little way of knowing the journey they took to arrive at my door. But the lessons are the same. The need for connections are as strong. We must reach for the other in us, in others.
Beautiful, Nol. Lovely. Thank you. And you have 2 others for us. And is this the one I'm going to share the picture on?
No, next one.
Next one. Okay, good.
If I can find it. Here we go. Open recent. Okay, so I'm going to get a cup of tea and
Here we go.
read.
Excellent.
This one I titled just, I don't know, to get it a title, My Journey. I was raised on a small subsistence farm in New England, working around machinery, animals, the land, or simply working. I have always enjoyed the physicality of toil, matching my strength against working the soil, against cutting wood, sawing and stacking, hauling to the fireplaces, moving large stones, building walls, and later the creation of the fantasies of my dreams and my mind in iron. I take inordinate happiness in the creation of beauty through toil. Iron is the most abundant element in the fabric of the earth. Iron was washed to the sea, found its way into the blood of mammals, makes your blood red, gives color to the trees, is the basic building block of life, for life. The first known mines were dug for iron oxide, used to decorate pots and bodies in ritual dance. According to the myth, various gods of various cultures gifted fire to humans. Others taught humans how to work metal. The metals are first meteorites, then gold and silver, then tin, then a mixture of tin and copper for bronze, and finally learning the smelting of iron. Through a quirk of fate, I discovered that working iron is deeply rooted in my own ancestral path. It is in my blood, as my great-great-grandfather was both a blacksmith and a wagon maker in the early 1800s here in Virginia. Both my great-grandfather and grandfather served as career engineering officers in the Navy, keeping the fleets afloat and moving. And they worked iron. When I light my forge fire, at least psychically, all the gods of yore, grandfather John Turner Lackey, my mentor, Bill Gitchner, all gather above, swirling to kibitz how to do the work, how the work should be done, which hammer to use, where to start. I am conscious of walking, however gently, in the shoes of Biscornet, who created the great hinges for the doors of Notre Dame, of the Huguenot Jean Tijoux, creating the marvels of Hampton Court, of Samuel Yellen and the legacy of classical ironwork that he left to us in the National Cathedral, Yale University, University of Pittsburgh, and contemporary smiths such as Dmitry Garikaris, Elizabeth Brim, Tom Joyce, Karina Mensoff. My apron has a fringe to allow the evil spirits to escape. When I put the forge fire to bed, I lay my rake and poker across the fire pot as a symbol of the cross to keep the devil at bay. My work is the transformation of alchemy, not into gold and silver, but my imagination into beauty and love and sent forth to the world in healing. This totality of work, of using mind, body, spirit, and imagination has been the long-running course of my life. It is simply my dance of the anvil, my dance of the forge, my dance of life. Across 50 years of working hot iron, I finally came to forged sculpture, which transcends the usual conception of ironwork. A gate may be a sculptural wonder, such as Albert Paley's gate at the Renwick Gallery in Washington, D.C., or an Art Nouveau grill created by Michael Bondi in the early 2000s, or by Edgar Brandt in the early 1900s. These, however, still function as a gate or a screen. Forged sculpture uses the same medium, the same tools, the same manipulations, but it has no other purpose than to gladden the heart, to make space visible, to show in a moment a thought, an idea. I just lost my place.
It's live.
Yeah, I understand that. Gulp.
You're good. You're good.
But it has no other purpose than to gladden the heart, to make space visible, to show in a moment a thought, an idea, a dream of the maker. And in that sense, it is a privilege to look upon. For how often are we allowed a deeply intimate view into the interior world of another person? How can we empathize, understand, or link as humans across this chasm of self. Sculpture, then, is yet another way to look into the thoughts, hearts, and experiences of humankind. Words, dance, paint, sculpture, and performance in their broadest senses are all ways the human heart tries to reach out and make visible what it knows, what it feels. Representation in 3 dimensions reaches back to the earliest of times. It connects time across centuries, from the carvings of stone or shaped in clay, these prehistoric objects found in the caves in Spain or France or our own Southwest, or the sculptural renderings of the painting of Picasso. We are struck by their uncanny similarity across the millennia, by the universality of human experience. Sculpture may be transcendent or simply point out the ridiculousness of human behavior. On the one hand, we have Rodin's Burghers of Calais, that extraordinarily moving, larger than life-size representation of the burghers who gave themselves up in order to sacrifice to save their city from the English in 1346. Or on the other, the silliness of Andy Warhol's soup cans. In my small collection, I have a rusty old can from the side of the road. A small arch is cut out near the bottom. Look in, and there sits the Buddha. Where else would he be? It is a gift from my friend, the artist and sculptor, Jeannie Dreves. My evolution into sculptural work was gradual, an internal need that slowly inserted itself into consciousness. While the demands in architectural work were to fill rectilinear spaces, the work that I created to fill them invariably became freer. Vines attached to a trellis, all becoming more 3-dimensional. Curves, scrolls, and foliage began to fill the spaces. Concurrently, my age was increasing, along with the longing to find out what ideas were in my head if I gave them time to emerge. What if I would make an object that did not have to fill somebody's driveway or sit on a balcony? If I allowed for space, time, and quiet, what would emerge? I needed more psychic space and less interruption. So I built a new forge, my 7th and last on land on a dead-end dirt road in the lee of the Blue Ridge Mountains. It is a short walk from my house, around a pond, across 2 small creeks, through a spot of woods. The building is set into the hillside so as to belie its height and to take advantage of being nestled in the earth, in Mother Earth. The walk allows me to shed the immediate world and focus on my work, my inner world, to enter into a zone of discovery, of delving inward, or exploration. I now spend a lot of time alone, having conversations with myself. I read a lot, autobiographies of artists, thinkers, Calder, Giacometti, Brancusi, Truett, and Hepworth. I try to grapple with their histories, their approaches to work, with their work. How can it help me on a lonely journey inward, pursuing that will-o'-the-wisp of self-knowledge, and how to make it visible in sculpture, in my sculpture? That is so precisely what is so difficult for the artist. Staying at the top of the tree in the wind of a howling gale, the tenuous thoughts struggling into words or lines or the ideas before being whisked away. Artists are reaching for the extraordinary. Mary Oliver writes, "Our concern is the edge and the making of a form out of the formless that is beyond the edge." It is the marches, it is the harvested fields of November, empty on the side of a steep hill, and you still plod on. It is the abyss too deep to plumb. It is Cézanne painting the same damned mountain again and again until he can see it. I have my solitude now, for I live alone, save with Jack, my big, black, wolfish looking dog, which allows me to shape my time to suit my needs. What do I need to accomplish in a given day? When to eat, read, push the jungle back to its appointed boundaries. Time for reflection on my chosen work rather than just work. As a born and bred New Englander, to work is easy. Thinking is the tender shoot. Like all new beginnings, it must be nurtured, time guarded to write, read, and think. And when I do, solitude infuses me with warmth and gladness. It fosters inner contentment, usually. Loneliness is the flip side. I have my hours of wallowing in woe is me, the bedraggled cat brought in from the rain, banging around mentally and physically, accomplishing little. Everything seems too hard, just getting through the march of days until death mercifully removes me from the mortal coil. Yuck. Natalie Goldberg talks of complaining to her Zen teacher. But Katagare, it is so hard. The writing, it's so lonely. And his answer, what is wrong with a little loneliness? Indeed. At the desk or anvil, I must force the mind to exert control. Who's in charge here? In order to stay with the task, I must summon both the strength and courage to continue moving the hand and the pen in conjunction with the mind, or hammer with the plan. If the thought peters out, the iron cools. Ah, I need a cookie, maybe milk or tea, or that's enough for now. Or worse, and even easier, that's good enough. Denis Levertov captures this in a poem called For Whom the God Loves Less. Each life in art goes forth to meet the dragons that rise from their bloody scales in cyclic rhythm. Know and forget, know and forget. And then look, some inflection of light, some wing of shadow is other, unvoiced. You can and you must proceed. In teaching blacksmithing, many students freeze with their first piece of hot iron, hammer in hand, standing at the anvil. I don't know what to do, is the anguished cry. Hit it, I bellow. It's only iron. We have tons more. Hit it, I bellow again. Happens. Move forward. Commit yourself to actions. Pencils have erasers. Mistakes are times of growth. What emerges from commitment and action varies greatly. The germ of an idea in writing or in iron. It starts with pen or pencil on paper. The bones are laid down and then fleshed out. Many experiments have ended as scrap, whether paper or iron. In iron, after making sketches at the anvil, they remain as a reminder of where I have tried to travel. Within lurks an idea trying to be resolved. These unfinished pieces, collections of words strung together, rattle around in my head or under the workbench. And then when least suspecting it, they may coalesce into something possible. Even today, my way is tortured, unsure, full of anxiety, still. But having traveled this way for enough time, I trust the process. Perhaps not the path, but a path will be found. What I confront is the difficulty of extracting the fleeting but sought after thought or idea from the everyday world. The important inner work of sitting down with oneself and forcing the mind to work on the problem, or the easier path of washing dishes, mowing the lawn, splitting wood. There is, of course, the Zen element in the day-to-day task, a mindfulness that lets you think while doing the work. The written word is more flexible. It is laid on the page for consideration, for continued thought and exploration. And because now tangible, visible, just as with a chalk drawing on a steel table, my mind can walk around the idea, flesh it out, expand the view from different angles. It is impossible to ignore for the moment. It is the decision to write at all over which I fret. What do I have to say that can stand as reaching toward a universal or perhaps helpful truth? Is it my ego that wants to be important or vital, or at least real? Of course, I aspire to write with historical understanding, with human passion, and the knowledge of the late Tony Youth, or about the internal struggle to be an artist, to examine the light of a human being with the graciousness and understanding of Anne Truitt, who weaves in and out of her art, her family, her life. These avenues for self-exploration and expression are my means to a sculptural end. As I have from the beginning, I continue to mine dreams. I look at the stars or clouds. I doodle in a big book on a white page. I risk myself with pen and paper and then make the leap to lead solder or modeling clay, or perhaps finely hot iron. I write. Anne Truitt's words could be my own. The large sculpture I am working on now is at once strange to me because I do not know its heart except as I tremble in my own, and familiar because it looks to me like mine. As I work on it, I scarcely dare breathe lest the tension between me and it will break. Truitt is creating monolithic painted totems, the paint so deep and rich, so varied in color, that the depth of finish reminds me of Denise Levertov's inquiries into the places in between two worlds. The borderline, that's where, if one knew how, one would establish a residence. I mean that edge, that watershed, that spine, that looking glass. I mean the edge between. Truitt reminds me again that the why is far more interesting and important than the how. She goes on to say that for an artist, the essential struggle is private and bears no relation to anyone else's. It is of necessity a solitary and lonely endeavor to explore one's sensibility, to discover how it works, and to implement honestly its manifestations. To move forward is to have faith, to have conquered your fears once, and thus knowing that it may be done again. The act of creation is an act of faith and trust in oneself. I know that in completing one piece, in sending it out the door, that will appear again, that terrible welling chasm. I just need to jump, to trust what I cannot yet see beyond the veil, to trust that I can find my way yet again inside the labyrinth of me. A recent project, Raven, is 9 feet tall. The design consists of 3 circles that pass through split stock, each progressively smaller, and finally rising skyward, ending in a stylized raven's feather. Here are the myths of creation. Raven, rising from the earth, leading humans through openings into worlds expressed by progressively smaller circles of life. Each hoop binds humanity as one. They are, of course, imperfect, and we are forced to travel again and still again. As we move upwards, the worlds are smaller, more crowded, more fractious. The sacred, but still trickster raven's feather is a symbol that we may have to lead us again to a new world. My heart flutters. We can do this. Be safe, my friends. Be brave. Be brave. Onward.
Thank you, Nol. Okay, let's open this up for some questions for Nol. We'll try to just do this where I see you doing the question, or we could, you could write it in the chat, but I think we can all be civilized and talk amongst ourselves. If you want to unmute yourself, if you have a question or a comment for Nol, you can write it in the chat or you can ask. So anybody?
I do. I don't have a question, but a comment. I just love the way that you so easily move from the present to the past, and just the different timelines. It's beautiful, and it could be awkward or like, where are we? But it really flows so nicely. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Ellen.
Yeah. And what a timeline, right? From 1934 onward. It's beautiful. Anybody else have something, a comment or a question for Nol?
Yeah,
Go
I-
ahead.
yeah, I enjoy the vividness of the descriptions and the details of the different things that Noel is thinking in the process. Just the process of how he gets to a particular idea is beautiful.
Thanks, Ken.
I really love particularly how you the comparison between smithing and writing,
Mhm.
that inner, getting the inside out. I love those images. Beautiful. Anybody else comment or question for Nol?
Sally.
This is Sally here. Hi, Nol.
Hi,
Sally and
Sally.
Todd. I just wanted to thank Suze also for bringing you into our living room of a Sunday afternoon. It's been a while since we've had that pleasure. So
Yay.
this was great. And I also want to tell others who may not know it that Nol has really helped encourage a lot of other people to write. Many years ago, we had a group of about 6 of us who would gather every week, and Nol used a Natalie Goldberg framework, and we would just write. And then if we felt like it, we would read to each other. And I remember the first time thinking, well, I'll write, but I'm not going to read to anybody. But right off, he made it so welcoming in his own example of writing. I just burst right on the reading scene and read it first time out. So
Yay.
wonderful to hear once again. And I hadn't heard the second piece. So thank you so much, Nol.
Yeah, thank you. Well, yes, and we do this the first Sunday of every month, Memoir Church, and it's this format, and we have lovely authors, writers, and artists that come in to do this. So tell your friends, and I'll put in a little plug for the donation button if you're feeling generous. Some more questions for Nol?
I have a question. This is Veronica Benson.
Okay, hi.
Nol, hi.
Hey,
Listening
hey,
to
Veronica.
all of your details and about the bacon and the eggs and the time with your parents and just the beautiful details. Was there a time when you were a child that you realized that you were that attentive to detail?
Nope. Sort of what passed in front of me, and if I liked it, I would grab it. If I didn't, it just went on. I can't say that I've been very disciplined about things until I hit blacksmithing. Teaching, I was pretty disciplined about teaching.
I was going to say, yeah.
I almost killed myself teaching, but anyway.
Well, that is evidenced by the students that still keep in touch with you.
Yeah.
But thank you. This was wonderful. And Jeffrey's here listening too.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Jeff.
coming. Nil, do you want to say something to Nil?
Yeah, I'd like to first say, Nol, wonderful, gorgeous, beautiful as always, and I loved how you explored connections throughout the pieces that you read, and then also coming to the conclusion towards the end. One of the conclusions is what's wrong with a little bit of loneliness, and I'm particularly curious about what's the difference in your work during the times that you feel very connected versus during the times that you feel really alone. But of course, being alone is connecting to self as well. So
I don't know. It's an evolution. It's still an evolution. The most exciting time is when you can get lost in a project. But that's the creative. And the funny thing about iron is that the creation is in the idea and presenting the drawing to whoever. Then it becomes just work. It's just cutting iron, getting it hot, and beating it into position. Sometimes that's a long process. occasionally when you start getting it together and it starts to take on its own presence, and then you can get a little bit more involved. But invariably, at the very end, when it goes out the door, I am really glad to see it go. Of course, then I have to look at the chasm again. So
Yeah, right. Well, I'll just spotlight, since I couldn't get the other thing on, I'll just spotlight myself to, I don't know if, Nol, it's not perfectly polished, but can you see Nol made me this beautiful leaf that was just a pipe, an iron pipe. And I wish I could get that other piece of work up. But Mary, are you Mary Sherman Willits?
Yes.
Oh, hi. It's good to meet you.
I can set my hand down again, but I just want to say hi, and what a joy it is to hear your words again. You know, you have the artist's ability to compare one thing to another as gift of metaphor, and you've been working on these pieces for a wonderful long while now, and each time I hear it, it gets better and better and better, because you've given yourself a chance to go back and think about each thing that you were trying to say and what else it reminds you of or makes you think of. You know, these long stretches of Denise Levertov, for instance, or Anne Truitt. It just gets richer and richer as you revise this. And so, Nol, now that your books, now that your tools are finding other hands to use them, when is this going to be a book?
Mary, you and I are similar. We're working similarly with him, but
You just got to flog him on, right?
It is a manuscript, and he's plugging, but Nol.
Yeah, I hear you all.
We have a couple more questions and then we have to go. We're gonna, Lisa. Hi, Lisa Stathopoulos.
Hi, Lisa.
Stathopoulos, say it right. I
I
can do that to her. She's my best friend. No, you already answered it, but because you said you're so happy to have them. And by the way, always, 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 so beautiful and so specific. So many specifics that are just make you feel like you're in the room. And as I've said to you before, like I'm sitting down to a warm fire, irony, listening to you tell a story. But I'm wondering, I've seen what your pictures of your stunning work in your books, and also watched videos, which you all probably know that you can watch him at work online. But there is no piece, not one piece that you ever, I wondered if you ever got attached to and had a hard time saying goodbye to.
Yes, some small sculptures I really like, and I've given them to friends so I can see them again.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yes. Well, Nol, thank you so much. Thanks for your perspective. And this is what I think is just the beauty of memoir, which is finally, noted in the world of literature as being a valid genre. And it's so gorgeous and astonishingly rich. I get transported to a different place and time and a whole different upbringing. And even though I'm a New Englander, it's so the time frame. And someone wrote, lovely, lovely writing. Your descriptions are wonderful. Thank you for fully transporting me to a different place and time. I would love for you to read me to bed each night when I go to bed. And Veronica said she has a Nol sculpture she'd like to show off. Yes, you may. And so I'll switch you out and we'll see. Hold on here. I'm trying to get you.
Ooh.
Wait, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you.
It's called Three Happy Hearts.
So nice. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Nol. Let's give him a big round of applause for beautiful work.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
You
Thank
did a
you. It was
beautiful
wonderful.
job. He was very nervous about reading, but you did spectacularly. And thank you. And thank you for sharing your words. Now get that book out. Next time, the first Sunday in April, will be Nil, who we heard from today, Nil Demerkubuk. So we hope you join us again. And thank you all for coming. And check out manuscriptmentor.com, make a donation, take a class, join Nol in his class for inspiration, and many of you here. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you for
Nol.
hosting.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Nol.
Thank you.